Hi, and welcome back. Joining us right now, live from the US, is Elise Mitchell. She is a three-time CEO, an executive coach, and a leadership development strategist. She's the founder of one of the top 10 fastest-growing public relation firms globally. She's the author of a best-selling book on leadership and was named a top speaker by Huffington Post. She's a passionate advocate and an advisor to entrepreneurs and their startups. Elise, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Elise.
Thank you for having me. Hi, nice to see you all today.
Nice to see you too. So, what time is it in the States?
You really want to know? It's 5:30 in the morning. So
So
we're just getting started on our Saturday here.
coffee or tea, is it?
Coffee, oh, definitely. I have my mug here that says "fearless" on it, which is a good a good way to start a conversation on a startup, right?
Yes, nice, short and concise.
Mhm.
Well, speaking of fearless,
Yeah.
just a pretty direct starting question. How did you get your start? How did you get your career started?
Well, so I always knew I wanted to be in public relations. That was the industry that I built my company in. And I worked for a few advertising agencies when I first started my career. I worked in corporate life, and then I started my own company. I was about 13 years into my career before I actually went out on my own to start a business. And it was a public relations and communications agency. And today I'm actually in a different industry. We could talk about that in a minute, about planning a pivot and how you actually exit a company that you build. I actually sold my firm and then started a new business that I have today. But I loved public relations. I thought I was going to be I had this one simple dream when I got out of college, which was global domination in public relations. That was all very simple dream. But there were a lot of interesting twists and turns in that journey. Of course, I never achieved that exactly, but it was a really interesting ride, and entrepreneurship was a big part of the experience that I had.
Hmm.
So, you talk about a journey and a ride. Can you elaborate more on your amazing book, Leading Through the Turn?
Yes, so I wrote a book, as you mentioned, Leading Through the Turn. It's a leadership book, but it's also really a story of how I built my company. And the idea of leading through the turn comes from a favorite hobby of mine, which is motorcycling. And there was a concept I learned when I first learned to ride a motorcycle about 15 years ago. They teach you that the most dangerous place that you can be on the road when you're riding a motorcycle is in an intersection for obvious reasons, but the second most dangerous place is in a turn. And the reason is because in a turn, there's all kinds of things that could go wrong. There's rocks and oil slicks and all kinds of hazards, potholes, but also the trajectory of the turn itself is very difficult to judge unless you're very skilled. So what they tell you is, as you approach the turn, don't stare straight into the turn. That's actually called target fixation. They said if you do that, you'll ride straight into whatever the hazard is. Instead, you want to look through the turn, keep your eyes focused on where you want to end up. And the reason is because your bike follows your eyes. And I remember learning that. I thought that's such a great sort of a mantra for leadership. And for living too. And as you build a business, like how do you keep sort of one eye on the road in front of you and all the potential hazards that you have to face today? And how do you keep one eye looking down the road so you know where you want to end up? And so I used that a lot in how I was building my business to try to take care of business today, but to be visionary and to try to think about where the business needed to go and how we were going to get there. So the book was a way for me to share a lot of the stories of building a company, from the very, very beginning, all the ups, all the downs, lots of mistakes we made, and all the lessons that I learned. And so I was really happy to be able to write the book and share those lessons with other people who might want to learn how to be a great leader or how to build a company.
In the book, you mentioned that the journey is as much important as the destination. But what happens if you're faced with a change of destination mid-journey?
Yeah, so I was always what I call a destination leader, which is someone who is very focused on the goal, like always wanted to get there, wherever there was. And I was missing a lot of the journey and a lot of the experience. I didn't enjoy the ride as much as I should have. And so that was a huge insight for me is I needed to be more present in the moment and to be what I call a destination leader with a journey mindset, somebody who really enjoys the experience and takes in the ride and doesn't just focus only on the goal, but really tries to live in the present. And that's really tough when you're goal oriented or when you're always looking through the term. But to your point about that is while you think of life and leadership as a journey and building a business is certainly that way, you're going to have detours. And this is so frustrating because when you see there and you want to go there and then the road takes you a different direction, you have to figure out what are you going to do? Because plan A a lot of times doesn't work out. Maybe even plan B doesn't either. So you got to have plan C, D, and E and be nimble enough and agile enough to shift and go wherever the detour is taking you and still find a way to win. I think that's really key in the startup world is a lot of times things just don't go like you want them to. So what are you going to do about that? And a lot of that is it's not really what happens to you in life that matters. It's what you do in response to what happens that matters the most. And a lot of that is mindset. It's you saying, okay, this has happened. I'm not happy about it. I didn't think I would find myself on this detour, whatever that might be. But what am I going to do now? And I've still got to find a way to win. And that really is one of the things that helps you be successful as an entrepreneur, as opposed to a lot of people who just sort of, at some point, they just give up. And you have to be tenacious and resilient to never quit in order to try to achieve your dreams.
It's interesting how you say that you always have to react and trying to win based on the situation. And it seems like you have won in being a three-time CEO of entrepreneurial and global corporate company, leadership strategist, an executive coach, an author, and a speaker, and that's just naming a few. So in terms of the metaphor with destination, that seems to be a whole lot of destination you have there.
Yeah.
So what drives you to do so many things?
Well, that's a really good question. So I like to learn. I like to grow. I want to be challenged. I'm not one of those people who just sort of says, okay, well, I accomplished this, so I'll just sort of sit back and retire or relax or just take it easy from here. I always feel like there's something more that I could do, or there's something better I could be at if I just worked a little bit harder. And I think that's what helps keep you alive and vibrant, and it keeps you growing in your career because the world just keeps changing. No matter, I remember at some point I would think to myself, well, gosh, isn't there some point you just sort of know it all and you could just stop? And of course, the answer is no, there isn't, because even though you think you might know it all today, the world will change tomorrow, as we've sort of seen this year. It's even in an accelerated case of change, and how much change can happen to you that's just the nature of things. And so you want to be a learner, constantly willing to grow, change, develop new skills. To me, that's a sign of someone who really enjoys what they do because they see opportunity to always get better. It's not like a bad thing, like, gosh, I need to be better. It's more like, oh, this is great. I can learn and I can grow. It's just, again, it's sort of the way you approach life that I think makes the difference there in having a learning leader's mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of impressive accomplishments, under your leadership, your PR agency grew more than 500% in 5 years. How did you manage to achieve that?
I get asked that a lot. Well, the funny thing was, this is why this is kind of interesting this year. Our first year of really big growth that began that 5-year period happened in the recession in 2008. And that's why I tell people 2020 could be the first year of a whole new trajectory of growth for your business. You don't know, because whenever there's sort of crisis like the people feel at the moment, there's also potential opportunity because things have changed. The rules have changed. The game has changed. There's new and different needs that clients have and customers have. And those folks who are being opportunistic to look to see what those needs are and develop new skills and new services, new products, they're the ones who really thrive in times like this. And that's what we did. We just looked around and thought, wow, the recession happened. The whole world has changed pretty quickly. And my first thought was, we are going to do so well in this time, because I thought all of our competitors were sort of these big agencies, because we worked with really big companies like Walmart, Procter & Gamble, Hilton, some of these really big consumer brands. And their other agencies were very, very large firms. And we were just a small to mid-sized firm. So we were far more agile. We were much quicker to change and make change, to sort of be the go-to agency. We could turn things around if we had to. We turn them around overnight. Not that you want to all the time, but in a moment of crisis, you have to be responsive to your clients. And you have to be able to change on a dime and see where things are going and shift that way very, very quickly. And if you're too hierarchical, or you're too structured, or too kind of stuck in your ways, you're not going to be able to do that, and you won't be as successful. So for us, being very agile, being very opportunistic in our thinking, we took a lot of risk. We launched a lot of new products and services in that time where we saw the market going. It really helped us. And I think we earned reputation with our clients as, wow, call them. They will get it done as quickly as you need it. And they've got new ideas and new ways of doing things that are going to help us in the future. And I think that really helped us to grow.
That all sounds great. And then, speaking about change, I think it's time to get back and flex some of these writer muscles. And so, how would you explain leadership, or what leadership rather means to you in one sentence?
In one sentence, what does leadership mean to be in one sentence? I think I would say it's not about you. It's not about you. And the reason I say that is because that didn't occur to me until well into my years as being a leader, because I was very interested in myself, my career, my company, my goals, what I wanted to achieve, my vision. That's very natural. I think that makes you a really good leader in a lot of ways. But at some point, you have to realize it isn't all about you. At some point, it's really about everybody else. When you have built something and accomplished something, it is, I think, crucial that you begin to turn that around and say, how do I help everybody else around me to succeed? How do I help them with their careers? How do I coach them and give them opportunity so that they can rise in their careers? How do I embrace their vision for what the company could be and sort of bring them into those important decisions? And that's really actually feels great as a leader when you make that shift, because then you focus much more on everybody else and helping them. And the burden of leadership comes off of your shoulders too, because then you have help. You have really smart people. If you've done a good job of recruiting great people, and I had fantastic people around me who were all really smart and very good at things that I was not. And when I realized they are there to help me lead and build a company so that it's really bigger and better than me, that was so freeing for me, because it was like, wow, this is like a group effort. And I feel better about that. I feel more confident because I have more bright minds at the table to help me think through difficult decisions, and I have more help. And we became a bigger, better agency when I was much more inclusive about leadership. So I think that's a key, is it isn't all about you. It's really about everybody else. And the key there is how do you get things done with and through other people and become what I would call a multiplying leader, somebody who multiplies their results because they're able to attract really great people and get a lot more done through other people than you could ever do on your own.
Mm-hmm. I would actually like to ask a follow-up question to that. How do you think leadership has changed during the COVID era, and what are the kind of skill sets a leader needs today?
Mm. Well, this year has taught us a lot, hasn't it, about what leadership needs to look like in a different way than the way things were getting done in the past. So I think, first off, we've learned a lot about resilience. You cannot be an easy quitter. You have to have the grit not to quit in this type of environment, because it wasn't a sprint. I mean, we all sort of thought, by April, May, early June, like maybe it's going to get better in the summer, and it didn't. Not really. I mean, there was some waves, but it's still here, and it's really more of a marathon, not a sprint. So you have to have resilience to last as long as something is happening to you in this particular situation, this crisis, these challenging economic times. You also have to be really good at looking through the turn, right? To be a future thinking leader, to look ahead, to see what are the changes that are happening, what's coming, what are the impacts of those changes going to be, and what do I need to do about it as a leader? What new products or services should we be developing? How do we shift the way that we price ourselves or how we do business with people that makes us a better business partner so people choose us over the competition? And then how do you be more agile than your competitor, just like we did back in 2008 when everybody else was sort of clunky and sitting around trying to figure out, like how to turn a battleship. If you think of it that way, they just took forever for them to make change. And we were quick. We were agile. We were able to just turn very quickly and develop new things and do new ways of thinking and doing that made us more effective. So I think resilient, be a future thinking leader, look through the term, and to be agile.
Hmm.
I mean, from what we've heard up until now, it seems like you possess all these qualities. It's been a story of overwhelming success. But can you tell us about failure and what you've learned from that?
Yeah, well, I will tell you this. For many years, failure was my biggest fear. And I think this is really important for leaders to sort of come to terms with. Like, what are you afraid of? What is it that drives you? And not that that's a bad thing, because, I mean, everybody's afraid of something. And sometimes we use our fears to motivate us, right? Like, I never want to be poor again, or I never want to be a failure. I want to be respected, whatever that may be. That can drive you, and that could be a powerful motivator. But it also holds you back, keeps you from being as courageous as you want to be as a leader. So I was always afraid of public failure. I thought, what if my agency collapses? What if it falls apart? What if we lose all of our clients? What if we lose our talent? I mean, I would just stay awake at night, worry about all these things. And of course, those things didn't happen, but we had lots of things that did not go our way. And I remember sort of dealing with some of the more difficult failures and thinking to myself, you know what, like, I thought this was going to be the end of the world, and it wasn't really that bad. I mean, failure is not great, but it's not the end of the world. It's really the time that you learn and grow the most as a leader. And that's, I think, an important truth for us to remember as leaders, is that you grow most when you are challenged. Because when you've sort of hit bottom, something has gone wrong. That's when you are forced to stand back and figure out, well, what didn't work? What do I need to learn? What needs to change? What needs to be different from here so that I'm better? It always makes you wiser as a leader. Like, oh yeah, I remember when I tried that. It didn't work so well. And now I know a better way. And you can't learn that in school. You really just only learn that by doing. And I think that's really crucial as a leader. It also helps, I think, if you don't view failure as some sort of commentary on your intellect, how smart you are, or even your capabilities, because failure happens to everyone. So just sort of say that, failure happens to everyone. It's going to happen to me at some point in time. It's much more important to view failure as an iterative process, something where you try something, you see what works, you see what doesn't work. Learn from your mistakes. You try something new. Try a different strategy. And each time you try, you get better and better and better. And to me, once I sort of accepted that and thought about that, I was much more willing to try things because I thought, nobody gets it perfect out of the gate. Everybody has to learn at some point. So if I put something out there and I learn as I go, I'm going to get to the state of success much faster than if I sit back and I wait and I try to perfect everything and I worry about how people are going to judge me or whatever that might be. You got to set those fears aside. It's sort of that idea of the test and learn model. Be willing to test things and learn and improve, put them out there, test them again, learn, improve. It's a cycle, and there's much more courage that comes from that. And for me, it was being willing to realize that failure doesn't define me. It's just something that happens to you. And it's, again, much more important how you respond than what happens to you that matters.
Mm-hmm. And with so many projects behind you at this point, I would like to ask, do you experience burnouts often? And if possible, can you kind of give your point of view on the eternal question between balancing a constant drive for professional development as well as fulfilling your personal life?
Yeah, no, that's a really critical question, especially right now. I think a lot of people are feeling burnout because it's just such a difficult time. But back to what I said earlier about being a destination leader, always focused on the goal. Well, that's a strength. So I'm very driven, very results oriented as a leader. That's good because you can get a lot done when you're driven. But it can also be a problem. And that's when we rely too much on our strengths. We overuse our strengths to where they become a weakness. And so for me, I became so focused on results and so driven and so determined that my company was going to be successful that I really wasn't investing in other parts of my life. So being a mom, being a wife, my own personal health and well-being, my friendships, those things were really suffering because I was putting everything into my company. And so I tell people, as I mentioned to you a little bit earlier about motorcycling, motorcycling actually saved my life. And I know that sounds really funny. People are like, how could that be? I think motorcycling sounds dangerous, Well, for me, motorcycling saved my life because I was not doing anything to invest in my personal life. And at some point, I kind of was hitting a wall, in professionally, and I was losing my temper, and I had very high expectations for people, and I was pounding my fist on the table a lot. And I think my people were sort of like, "What happened to her? Like, where did the old Elise go?" And my husband sat me down one night at the kitchen table, and he said, "Something's got to change. You're just so hard. We love you, but nobody really likes you right now." And I said, "Well, I know I need to change, but I don't know how," because business was going great. It was everything else that was suffering. And so he said to me, why don't we go on a vacation together? And so in a moment of insanity, I agreed to get on the back of his motorcycle and take a 10-day trip together. And I had never done that before. He'd always ridden motorcycles and such. And I thought, this is going to be so uncomfortable. I just don't think I'm going to enjoy this at all. Your hair's all messed up because you have a helmet on. I'm not going to even get to be in charge because I'm on the back of the bike, But I will tell you, I got on the back of his bike and I never looked back. I was hooked on motorcycling. I fell in love with it and came back, learned to ride my own bike. We ride together all the time. We take a lot of trips together around the world, right now still here in the US, but typically we try to go really beautiful places like Bulgaria to ride. And so motorcycling taught me one important thing was I rediscovered joy in the journey because I had lost that. All I cared about was getting to the destination. And so I tell people, you have to live a full life. You have to have joy. You have to experience the journey, as we talked about earlier. So find those things that you love, whatever that may be for you, a hobby. Maybe it was something you always said you wanted to learn how to do. Maybe you wanted to learn to paint, or you wanted to learn another language, or you love to travel, or whatever it is. You have to make time in your life for those personally enriching experiences, because that actually makes you a far better leader, because it opens your mind to creative thoughts, helps you think in new and different ways, helps you learn new skills. There's a lot of neuroscience behind why you should spend time in hobbies and personal interests and with friends and family, because it makes you a far better leader and it helps you from not experiencing burnout.
Yes, it's true that at some point you get addicted to crossing stuff off the list, and burnout comes very easily. Um, but now, because we're a bit short on time, and before we finish the interview, I'm going to ask you one last question. And what is your advice for students like me and Nick here, who want to be entrepreneurs and want to be as successful?
Some advice. Well, I would say this. When I was in college, I wish there had been an entrepreneurship program of some kind, a startup group that you could be a part of. So you would have a chance to actually build a business while you were still in school. Now that's available today, and that's really great. So if you have access to that experience, you need to do it. If not, I would say if you dream of starting your own company someday, go work for an entrepreneur right now who is doing things right, and get that sort of front row seat, if you will, to watch entrepreneurship done the right way. Watch them build a compelling culture. Watch them make difficult business decisions. Watch how they hire talent and how they reward talent. Watch how they do marketing and sales and new business development. All those things are really critical components of a successful company. And it helps if you can see somebody else doing it, and if you're a part of that team. And that's what actually happened to me. I worked for 2 other agencies before I started my own. I worked, actually 3. I worked for a public relations firm and 2 advertising agencies before I ever started my own company. And I was in corporate life too. But I always say that helped me so much, because I would think back to the way they had done things right. And I would learn from that and say, oh, yeah, I remember how they made this decision, or what kind of culture and values that they created the company around. And I thought, how do I do that for my own company? So it really taught me by watching and experiencing other entrepreneurs who were doing things right. So that would be the advice that I would give to people today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to add? Anything you'd like to say to either, college students like us or the ones watching from the university, or just anyone out there who's interested in startups?
Yeah, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride. The ride of entrepreneurship was the greatest ride of my life. I loved it so much, and don't miss it. Make the journey matter. Be fully present and accept whatever experiences are happening to you. Learn from them, remember them, build on those experiences. Don't wish something away. Don't wish for the future. Just live in the present and try to make the very most of it while you can, because this will be gone. This time will be past before you know it. And you want to be able to take the experiences of each moment and help you become all the leader that you want to be. So be sure to enjoy the ride.
Well, thank you very much for the inspiration. And
so much.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Me too.
It's great to talk with you all. Best of luck, and hope we get to see each other in person someday soon.